Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jade, and this is How to App on iOS. And today, we're going to be hanging out with the amazing, the Trailblazing Venus to Mars. But first, we're going to kick off with one of her singles. This is called Take My Shoulder. It's also featuring Laura Jane Grace. Let's get into it, yeah? Oh, yeah.
Take my hand, take my shoulder, I understand, I can hold you, I know you can, you're something bolder, there is no plan. And it's getting colder. Oh, my brother, see my sister. There are no others. There is no difference. I could be you. I could be you. You could be me. You could be me. We struggle onwards and desperately. There's too much fear. There's too much hardness. There's too much fear. It's never farthest. Stop your hate. Stop your gun. Stop your fighting. We are one. Hold me, sister, hold me. Hold me, brother, hold me. Hold me, father, hold me. Hold me, mother, hold me. Hold me, sister, hold me. Hold me, brother, hold me. Hold me, father, hold me. Hold me, mother, hold me. Hold me, sister, hold me. Hold me, brother, hold me. Hold me, father, hold me. Hold me, mother, hold me. Hold me, sister, hold me. Hold me, brother, hold me. Hold me, father, hold me. Hold me, mother. Carry me, I'll carry you. We could be stronger. We could be stronger. We could be true. We could be true. Make me wise. Make me breathe. Make me feel you.
Boom. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. I hope you're doing well. As I said in the beginning, my name is Jade, and this is How to App on iOS. This is our weekly interview, which you do weekly, of course. Alrighty, so that track was called Take My Shoulder, so by our wonderful guest who is on here today, with a guest performer on that track, which is Laura Jane Grace, who is another amazing artist who one day maybe I'll get on this show, who knows. Alrighty, let's jump straight in because I first came across this artist, let's see, it was around 2006. I had just come out pretty much as a trans artist. I'd taken away 3 years from making music to begin my journey, and I joined this really interesting little website. You may have heard of it. It's called, it's not around anymore, it's called MySpace. There you go. And I came across all these artists. Well, I thought, hang on, am I going to be the only trans person in the village here? And you know what? I found a whole bunch of amazing trans artists on MySpace. And one of them was this particular artist and some of her friends, one of which I've had on the show previously. So I was absolutely engrossed by this artist going, holy shit, she's been cranking this stuff out way before I was even thinking about this. Well, way before I even had the balls, so to say, to make my transition jump. Anyway, she has done it all. She's just an incredible artist, incredibly unique, has traveled, released so much music. It is just ridiculous and is, as I said, and I don't use this word lightly, an absolute trailblazer in the music industry. So, without further ado, I'm finally super happy to have on the show, and let's bring her into the show. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the amazing Venus to Mars. How are you today, Venus?
I'm good, thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm so glad you came on. As I said, I first came across you on MySpace. Now, MySpace was an amazing tool, I believe. I wish it would come back. Now, there is a new MySpace, by the way, which is actually like gaining, like, I think it's got 1.5 million people on it at the moment. But like when I came across your music, I was just like, what the hell? There's somebody like me who exists making music. I'm going to hit you straight off with my opening question that I'd hit everybody with. What does music mean to you?
Well, I've always thought of it as kind of my religion. Art in general as a religion, it has that kind of impact on me. And music being on the forefront of all of that. I think because, well, I started as a painter and then moved into filmmaking, and then I became a performance artist. But music has always kind of been something that I've gone after, and when I started the horses, it became the main thing that I did and I concentrated on, and it drives everything for me. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Do you recall the music that was played in your household when you were growing up, and has it influenced you? Who are some of those artists that you recall your parents possibly playing, and has it influenced you?
No, nothing that my parents played.
I always find it
I've
interesting.
been around a long time.
My dad listened to horse racing when I was a kid, so it had absolutely fuck all influence on me.
No, so I grew up. I've been around. When I was in high school in the 70s, and that was mostly top 40. There was no internet. There was no streaming or anything like that. So you were kind of stuck with whatever was on mainstream radio, and it was horrible. So I was very discouraged. I actually went into like classical guitar, and I played with flamenco a little bit because classical seemed too boring to me. And flamenco, you got to hit the guitar, which was exciting. but no, rock and roll and stuff, it just was all so canned and so horrible that I just like, nah. But then the punk era came around as I was finishing the high school age and becoming independent young adult, and that just blew me away. And I suddenly realized the whole DIY movement was, I could do this. I could do this right here. I didn't have to have a big studio. I didn't have to have a record contract. I didn't have to have any of that. So I with some friends of mine, one of which became my first drummer in all the Pretty Horses, Bill Bailey, we formed some early bands together, punk bands, playing with it. And new wave came around after that, so that we started bringing in synthesizer stuff. But I mean, we didn't have any money. So the synthesizer we ended up getting was one of those realistic synthesizers that came out way back. Do you remember those?
Realistic.
So that was the first one. Bill's brother was in Denver, Colorado. Bill and I hitchhiked out there. His brother had a little Moog, and we got him to join one of our early bands. And so that was our, we upgraded a little bit from the realistic to the Moog. But we kept that punk flavor and that punk aggression. And that's when I started. My bass player at that time, Dave Frame, and my synthesizer player, Charlie Bailey, they were both audiophiles, and they just did all of the underground stuff. And those two were the ones that brought to me all of that, all of the music from that era. And that's what inspired me, and I moved forward with that. And when I met my spouse, before we were married, and when we were just friends and kind of going back and forth, she introduced me to different other New York punk artists, and because she was also an audiophile. And one of them was Patti Smith, who I just have followed ever since. I did, back when I was 9 or 10, I came across David Bowie singing why can't I think? I got a brain cramp now. Life on Mars. And it had just come out, and that was like, who is this? And I was just a kid, and I was like in my mom's car. It was at night, and we were parked at a big box store, Target, back then. And I grew up in Duluth, Minnesota, so it's a smaller city.
Yeah, I've been there.
Way up north. And I'm in, back in those days, you could just leave your kid in the car alone when you went in the shop. So I was sitting out there in the car all alone, listening to the radio, and this came on, and I was so amazed. And then I caught David Bowie on the Midnight Special. I believe they did a 1984 special. I think it was a Midnight Special, but it was on TV, and it was in my sister's room because she was watching, and she said, "You got to come here." And she's older than me. She's 6 years older than me. So I came there, and then it was like, oh, now I see, because he was doing all the gender stuff. He was being all ambiguous, and that's when I really started paying attention to his journey as well. So it's a combination of that Bowie-esque melody-based glam rock, not hair metal or glam, not 80s glam, but 70s glam, and then the wonderful DIY punk stuff is what kind of has driven me musically.
Do you remember the first album that you were given as a gift, and the first one that you purchased out of your own money?
Oh, yes. Yes, I went through a phase of being into folk music.
Nice.
And I was given Simon and Garfunkel
album
for a birthday, and I was in a youth group at that time, and that was my first album given to me. The first album I purchased was PIL's Flowers of Romance.
Wow.
Um, so that's a pretty 180-degree.
I always find that question
turnaround.
super interesting because it's normally, you know, it is with everybody. It's a complete opposite of where people are these days. I've told this story before on this show. My old man, he thought, oh, I better try and like understand this metal stuff. And I was like listening to Slayer at the time, and he bought me Poison, Look What the Cat Dragged In. And I was like, dude, you missed the mark totally. but good on you for trying. Good on you. So did you have any, at school or anything like that, did you do any lessons for music? Was there anything that grabbed you at school? Did you get forced to play the recorder?
I did do the recorder. Although it was a flutophone.
Flutophone.
So it was the plastic stepchild of the recorder. It was very easy to play. It was plastic white with a red place to put your lips, and then it had a bell at the end. So I played that, but that was, I chose to play guitar. Oh yeah, you found it. There it is. That's
I lost it. There it is. Of course I found it. The flutophone, folks.
Flutophone, yes. So that was my school experience. But I never pursued music formally in school. I picked up the guitar on my own, acoustic guitar, and I didn't get an electric guitar until I'm actually looking at my first electric guitar. I have it here. I bought that just after I got out of high school. So I was, 18? And that was my first electric. And once I did that, then I was like, oh, okay, now I see. I want to do rock and roll.
Absolutely. Speaking of making rock and roll, guys, today's show is actually sponsored by DistroKid. And we'll be talking a little bit more about DistroKid later on in the show. If you want to release your music and grab your guitar and release some music, you can do so for $19.99 per year. And you get unlimited songs and albums to release. And they land everywhere. Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music. So you can go from being that little bedroom guitarist sitting on your bed noodling away to being a rock star, even if it's in your own mind. But anyone around the world can just pull up your music, which is really cool. So we want to thank DistroKid for sponsoring one of these interviews a month. It's fantastic that they have jumped on board because I release all my music through DistroKid, and so should you. All right, so the recorder phone to rock and roll.
Yeah.
We're uncovering some things here already. Who was it?
So here.
Don't tell me you have it.
This is my
Oh,
first
nice.
electric.
You still have it. Look at that
And
thing. That thing has seen some wars.
See the damage here, but it's a guild. So there we go. There's the top. I got it for, I think at the time, $450, and it was pristine. And then because I was young and I knew better, I thought, I pulled all of the electronics out of here and redid it the way I thought it should be, which was, of course, all wrong. And then I lost track of it. And it was just this year, last year, because we just changed. Last year, I finally, my second guitarist in the band, Susanna Sweet, is working on, she's a guitar tech, and she's working at creating guitars and doing tune-ups and all that stuff. Very high-end stuff, actually, with another Brian Herb here who does that. And she works with him under his wing as she's learning everything. And she did the research, and she figured out how to rewire this. So this is now rewired back to the original way it should have been. It's a Bluesbird Guild Bluesbird.
Beautiful.
So that's my first one. And then I fell in love with Guilds. So all my guitars since then have been Guilds the ones I play formally in the band are Guilds.
And I love Susanna. I've actually met. In fact, Susanna has. She actually played shows with me when I was living in the US. She was my guitarist, and I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here. I don't know if you had known her before we met in the US, and that's how you got her. Is that right? Or kind of, sorta?
Yeah. No, I didn't. Well, I met a lot of people. And I did evidently meet her, but I don't remember meeting her until, then we did meet. And I remember when I met you, she was
at your gig,
there. And then I just got to talking with her and eventually invited her to join the band.
And she's absolutely amazing. So, I mean, I was so stoked to have somebody come up and learn my songs. And I mean, I was just so stoked to play gigs in the US. It was amazing. I have to admit, meeting you and all the amazing people I met when I lived in Minneapolis was just the greatest experience of my life. It was, I so desperately want to come back. I loved it so much. I got to see, for those of you in the audience here today, and thank you all for being here, I got to see Venus play in this tiny little club by herself doing this amazing solo performance. I sat there with goosebumps all over me, just going, oh my fucking Lord, I'm sitting here in the US watching Venus do a solo show. And then she drove me home. It was amazing. Thank you so much for that. It was wicked. I love that so much. So music lessons, we went from you grabbing a guitar. What was the first band that you did? Were there other bands before All the Pretty Horses, which we'll talk about soon? Yeah.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about do you remember the name of your first band?
My first band was called, and that went through two name changes. So the first name was The Floating Rocks.
Okay.
And that was a cover band. Obviously doing all punk music at the time, and but we did, like everyone who does cover bands, you did a few original tunes, and I happened to be the one to write it. And I found those old tapes. The guitarist of that band happened to have kept them on a cassette. And I learned all about, with my studio, I have reel-to-reels and stuff like that, and a nice cassette player. And I discovered how to bake old tapes so that they sound good. So I've got I got it right up there, the baking unit up there. And I transferred that old stuff, and I sounded horrible. I was horrible. So the songs were good. They were okay, as somebody in your 20s sometimes, and just kind of trying to figure it out, and way back in the day, they were okay. But I did not start singing until I was probably 21, 22. I didn't even start singing. So I a self-taught singer. And those early days, I was terrible. And, but that's who you are, and that's how you start. And yeah.
We're
So
all our worst critics. Come on.
But that song, that band did change the second incarnation when we started being more serious and working more exclusively on the original songs, and then it became the Rocks, ROX. And that lasted for maybe another 6 months, and then it all fell apart. And the next formal band, I tried little in-between things that never worked. And the next one that stuck, of all things, and this is before I came out as trans. So just so you have the timeline now, I came out as trans in 1988.
Wow.
So that it's a long time, and I've been around a long time. So So my second band that we really took seriously was called Straight Face. Of all things, yes, I know. But we call it Straight Face. And that was when my synthesizer player, Charlie Bailey, and then my first drummer for All the Pretty Horses, Bill Bailey, was in that band. And their brother, John Bailey. So it was three brothers and me. Um, and Charlie, being the audiophile that I talked about before, was all into what was going on with the rock and roll scene in Japan. And there was a movement there at the time. It was called, at least he saw through the magazines he read, because all we had were zines, magazines, and that's how you found out things, was visual rock or viz rock. I don't know what they called it in Japan, but it was based on kind of the kabuki tradition. So there was very elaborate costuming and white face kabuki makeup. And he just thought that was the coolest thing. And so we tried to do that. And we played with costume, and we played with a white face and kind of elaborate black line makeup. But of course, nobody except, the music nerds, and only few of them knew anything about what was going on in Japan. So they all thought we were trying to be Kiss. And and it didn't go over well. So
Awesome.
we eventually dropped that aspect, but we did get a manager from Minneapolis, because that was during the heyday of Minneapolis being kind of like the center of rock and roll. The suburbs and the replacements were beginning down here, and just name any of the Minneapolis bands. Husker Du, Babes in Toyland were just a little bit later than that band of mine, but it was kind of like Minneapolis was the hot spot in the nation, actually. And so we got out of Duluth at the behest of this manager, and we moved down and relocated to St. Paul, and we got a band house, and we tried real hard to make it, but we didn't. Eventually, different aspects, including some addiction issues, broke up the band. And I was kind of adrift on my own, and then I put out my own album, which still before I came out. So this was 1984. I put out a solo album on vinyl called Animal Angst, under my birth name, or my dead name, which was Stephen Grandel. And I did a reissue of right up there, where I'm looking at it right there. So the original one is just a black background. I'll bring it up here.
Yeah.
Here we go. So that is the reissue, which is multicolored, and the back here, and but the original one, the color was all black, but it had the two animals here, the Animal Angst, and there's my dead name up there, and then I signed it with my actual name, and that became kind of a cult DIY synthcore thing. Still, if anybody in your audience Googles that name, Stephen Grandel, and Animal Angst, you will find it all over the place. I only pressed 500. This issue is the last 22 that I did a special thing. This is the original pressing, only 22 left, and I did a bunch of little extra things in this one. But I mean, this was 1984, and it got all the way out to Germany. I have no idea how, but a lot of German DJs were playing the title, one of the main tracks called "Burn My Eyes," and it was amazing. I couldn't believe that. Anyway, then I came out, after that in 1988, and the whole world changed and everything
Yeah, it
changed for
does.
me, and it was a paradigm shift.
Yep.
And and then so I was managing, and I was performance artist and a filmmaker. And then in 1993, Bill, my drummer from one of those early bands, ran into me and said, "We got to reform that band." And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, no, we got to. Well, we didn't, but what we ended up doing is forming All the Pretty Horses.
Awesome.
And that was the end of 1993, and in 1994 is when we started performing, and we had gotten a set put together.
We'll talk about all the Pretty Horses really soon. I'm going to play a track. Oops, bring my camera back here. I'm going to play a track which I think is awesome. I think a lot of people are going to dig this. So this is from I think this is a TV performance or some kind of web performance. This is a cover of a Pink Floyd track. How did this come about? This performance?
Yes, there was a radio station here, KFAI, community-based radio, but real well put together one, and people in the community would have their own shows. And this person, who you'll see in the beginning of it, had a show where he would bring in artists and have them perform a whole performance, and he would do it live. And then he would take one song and he would get a film crew and film it and document it. And he chose that song to do it, and I chose to do it acoustically, because I had just began playing with acoustic, solo acoustic, aside from the full rock and roll shows that I was known for at that time and still am. But yeah, the acoustic stuff was new. So there
Awesome.
we go.
All right, guys. We'll be back. We'll say hello to everybody here after this. And so this is Comfortably Numb, Venus to Mars, and we'll be back shortly. So enjoy, because this is wicked.
So is this next one of my favorites?
I could do a favorite one.
The one we were going to videotape?
Yeah, I can do that one.
Let's
do
it.
that one. That was another request. And I'm going to have some water.
Comfortably Numb. I'm telling you, the first time I heard that one, it blew me away. Now I get to hear it live in Studio 5.
Hello, is there anybody in there? Just not if you can hear me. Is there anybody home? Come on now, I hear you feeling down. Well, I can heal your pain. Put you back on your feet again. Relax, I need some information first. Just the basic facts. Can you tell me where it hurts? There's no pain, you are receding. A distant ship smoke on the horizon. You're only coming through in waves. Your lips move, but I can't hear what you say. I was a child, I had a fever. My My hands felt just like two balloons. Now I've got that feeling once again. I can't explain, you would not understand. This is not how I am. I have become comfortably numb. I have become comfortably numb. Okay, just a little pinprick. There'll be no more. But you may feel a little sick. Can you stand up? I do believe it's working. That'll get you through the show. Come on, it's time to go. There's no pain, you are receding. A distant ship smoke on the horizon. You're only coming through in waves. Your lips move, but I can't hear what you say. When I was a child, I caught a fleeting glimpse out of the corner of my eye. I turned to look, but it was gone. I cannot put my finger on it now. The child is grown, the dream is gone. I have become comfortably numb. Comfortably numb.
Whoa. That gave me the chills.
You telling me?
In person. Excellent.
Holy shit. That was absolutely, let me bring you back in vocally here. That was incredible. I had goosebumps all the way through that, and I know everybody in the audience totally agrees. Wow. What a stunning stunning cover. That was fantastic. That was absolutely brilliant. And it is really hard to take such an iconic song like that and then turn it into your own song. Like, so many people struggle with that. And you have such a unique voice. Something I want to touch on, then we'll say hello to everybody here. I would give everything I own to see you in a stage performance of Hedwig and the Angry Inch. Oh my Lord. That would be incredible in my opinion. I think you would carve that shit up. Absolutely. Let's say hello to folks in the chat who have joined us here today. There's 30 of you here. Thank you all for being here. You guys rock. If you'd like me to call your name out, type something in the chat now. Hello, SM Borthwick. Hello, Joe Glenn, Forest of the Wolf, John David Lees, Kim Hardin Hudson, Mr. Back from Doing Time, the Lily Pillies, Sharon Baker, Feisty Feather, I say Kim Hardin Hudson, Deep Gravity, Rick Nelson. Who else is here? Stunning Russ 8889. Who else have I got here? I saw Pete Johns here. Hurricane Moon, hello to you. Jim Shannon on sound. Sith Vasquez, hello to you. Sith says, that was amazing, Venus. Who else do we have here? I know there's a lot more people I've missed out on. Black Covers. Derek Smith. Derek Smith said, I had to pull over and stop. I'm driving just to listen to this. You made people stop driving right there. Venus, incredible stuff. The internet is incredible. Suzanne, hello to you. Set up by Marshall. Audible video. There's so many of you here today. Thank you all for being here. Rockstar 1958. Barry Glenn. Thank you all for being here. Sorry if I've missed you out. I did give you a chance. I told you to type something in the chat so I could find you. Is what it is. Alrighty, let's get back into some questions because I want to move into all the pretty horses, but I want to talk about too, coming out as a trans person. I said in the beginning, not only are you a trailblazer of music, you're a trailblazer in this department too, because back around this time, a trans performer, I remember when I came out, I stopped making music for 3 years because I thought, who's going to listen to a trans artist? I felt like the whole world had turned against me. And in one day I had friends coming out the wazoo. Everything was amazing. And in one day, everything was gone. The whole rug had been pulled out for me. But I kept writing. And it wasn't until I found MySpace where I was like, oh my God. And I found you. I found Tempest and Jen Dean. Was like, what? There are people doing this. What was it like to go from one day, everything's okay, and then the whole world completely changes?
Well, so when I first came out in '88, I found a safe place, because this is way back then, in this very super underground cross-dresser club, where nobody could have their own name and you never knew where it was going to meet until like just days before. And it would always be in someone's house, one of the members, and you had to go through a series of interviews to get accepted in to make sure you were for real. And it was technically open to anyone, so people who were transitioning and from in either direction, but it seemed to be mostly a cross-dressing group of people. But it was still, I mean, that was all there was. And it was so amazing to feel like you weren't all alone. And it was also open to spouses. So my spouse, we had been married 5 years by then when I came out, which was a big deal. And that kind of threw everything up in the air for us. But amazingly, my spouse stayed with me. And, you know, you don't think about it today as being that strange, but back then it was. I mean, well, the social attitude towards anyone who was crossing was very, very, very negative, and it scared people. So a spouse of someone who came out could easily be afraid of their partner and just want nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
That didn't happen to us. And we stayed together and navigated. And it was rocky because there was no roadmap and there was nobody else out there doing it. Just this little group of clandestine people that would meet once a month. Well, I, being a social person, began to outgrow that once a month expression. and I started wanting to go out. So we started clubbing. We would go to the First Avenue and the gay 90s. I fell into some other club kids that were friends of mine and who were kind of androgynous. And so I would go out, and my spouse Lynette would go, and we would dress up. I would cross, and then we would go out, and we'd be out all night, and we'd be out at the clubs and dancing and all that stuff, and part of the scene. But I was like one of the only trans people out there doing it, aside from the drag shows. So we would go to the drag shows because we knew we could get away with that there, and there would be people who would be receptive to somebody crossing, particularly at that time we called it, male to female, but I wasn't a drag performer, so that was a little unusual. And for some people, even in the gay community, they felt a little creeped out by it. I mean, it was such a different world. But I was getting out and being more public. And then I had been a performance artist before this and a filmmaker, and I just started bringing myself as a trans person into my performance art and on stage in the art world. From there, I was much more public and much more out there in the art world as a trans person. And then Bill and I hooked up, and Bill said, we got to reform the band. And I was like, okay, we'll see. And then the horses developed, and I just immediately said, this is who I am. I had a little meeting with the band. At that time, it was Ed Ford on bass, Bill Bailey on drums, and me. And I had a little meeting, and I said, just so you know, I'm trans. I am going to be wearing these clothes, and I am, and by then I had been on hormones even, so I had already begun to develop, and that was a whole nother story because I did that on my own. I pestered a clinic here, which was part of our insurance thing, and I just pestered and self-advocated. As that I am trans and I am for real, and I would like to do hormone treatment. I didn't have anybody talking for me or representing me, and so I did, and I got on, and I convinced, after a month of this, calling almost every day, I got one doctor that was willing to talk to me, and I convinced him that I was for real. He didn't know anything about trans, how to do this, but he found an endocrinologist who was willing, and I had to self-advocate all over again. For her, she set me up, and these were early days, so what they did is they gave me a real high dose of estrogen, and that was it. No testosterone suppressant, just estrogen, and a very high dose. And there's more to that story that came back later, actually in 2013. I actually had a heart attack from high blood pressure, which was sparked from having been on a very, very high dose of estrogen for decades. And it finally caught up with me. Luckily, I survived it.
Damn straight.
But anyway, that's going off track. Yeah, so the early days were very difficult, but once I started, I had the band meeting with the band, and I said, this is who I am, this is who I'm going to be, and they were like real quiet for a while. And then they said, all right, let's get famous. And that was the only way to get out of this. So we just put everything into the band then, and just worked and worked and worked. And Bill moved on because of personal issues that he was struggling with, and I, that early stage where my debut album came out, self-titled ATPH, All the Pretty Horses, and that has not been released digitally yet. That is on my docket to get out this year, an official digital re-release of that album. And Bill produced it. I love the album, but nobody really knows about it because it's only on physical stuff. Anyway, it was more of a true collective at that point, more traditional band structure. After Bill left, I took it over as the main driver, and it became a solo project. So which I call Venus to Mars and All the Pretty Horses, kind of like Nick Cave and Bad Seeds, that kind of thing. That's All the Pretty Horses, my backup band. But at the time, that was really unusual. This would have been 1996, I think. I have to look at my stuff here, but I have it all documented somewhere. Anyway, that was unusual. So I kept it just as All the Pretty Horses, but structurally underneath it, I was the solo artist, and then that gave me the freedom to begin bringing in my own bandmates. On a basis where it changed. I would have to change people out after a while because people would get burned out or get tired, or there were other circumstances. But it gave me the option of being able to pull in a new bandmate and sustain working structure of a band. So I have different eras of All the Pretty Horses, and the one that you're talking about, with Tempest and Jendine was kind of Creature, which is, yes, that's up there. And we were the three of us, and we officially became an all trans band at that time. And the three of us worked very exclusively. By then, a documentary had come out about the band called Venus of Mars, which people can rent on Amazon Prime. If you just type in Venus of Mars, you'll find it. You can rent it and stream it.
It's incredible. I actually watched it 2 days ago. I rented it 2 days ago. Yeah.
It's 2004 release. So the language and the attitude is of the time. That is something important for people to know because they could just trigger people. But that was the world back then, and that's how you navigated. And being a trans person in those days, you were the ultimate freak. Yep. And that is just what everybody imagined and thought. And so the language is there. And within our relationship, the language was not the way it is now. Yeah. So just so people understand that. It's a period. It's a historical piece.
It's a period in time when I think you're talking about the slur word, which it's called these days, I think, which we call ourselves, which was a common word, and now everybody kind of started using it, and then it's a slur word now, and
the T word, yes.
So, it's an interesting topic, because these days you can get cancelled for it. And when you were telling your story about transitioning, I mean, I felt like I was riding along with you. Even in 2003, when I came out, there was still, here in Australia, those secret little cross-dressing clubs. I went to one of those. I went through the whole thing. There were husbands and wives there, cross-dressers, and I remember going to my first one. There was like sandwiches and an urn with coffee and stuff. And I was just like, it was like a mother's club.
Yeah.
It was like amazing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I kind of miss it. It was
underground
amazing.
As hell.
Oh yeah. Completely underground. You never knew people. I got to know some people from that club outside of the club. So I got to know their last name, and we got to meet together outside of that club. And that's when I was kind of breaking free of that underground thing and kind of breaking into public life as a trans person, which people would accost you on the street. I had people stop me in a grocery store, and they had seen, and by then I was getting early press attention for the music and stuff. And the press, they tried to be supportive and kind, but their language was all over the place. And, but I didn't know. It was just the way it was. And I was just happy for the exposure. But I had people stop me in one time in a grocery store. They recognized me from an article and photograph of me, and they had this big prayer session with their
Oh, Lord.
church group, and I thought they were fans, and then they were like, "Oh no, we've been praying for you to find the
Oh,
true
no.
path and to put aside your illusion of yourself," you know. And they were trying to be so kind, and I just like, oh my God. So it was a different
Yeah.
world.
Yeah, and some of the hate that come from, yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly, it's hard enough to be, it's hard enough to be a creative person and express yourself just as yourself, but when you have this added pressure of people deciding who you should be, it's
Oh,
an
yeah.
unbelievable, I mean, we're still in a time now where there are still people out there who feel they have the right or this privilege that they can decide who or how people should live. And it really is, I used to have anger for it. Now it's just, I feel pity for them.
That's an interesting thing, yes. So when I was on stage and touring, and we were going around the country, in our little van, my van, in the late 90s, we in the late 90s, we flew out to New York. That was the only way we could get out there and back fast. We'll talk about the debt I racked up on my credit cards later, but at that time, but I would fly the band out on weekends. We were out there 4 or 5 times a year, sometimes a couple times a month. We became part of the late 90s, early 2000s New York scene, punk scene out there. I played CBGB's a lot, the Limelight, Don Hill's, where Squeezebox was, and you're talking about Hedwig, that's where that started. John Cameron Mitchell had a night there called Squeezebox, and so I played that. So I was part of that scene, and it was drag punk out there, and I didn't know anything about it. I just kind of stumbled on it when I was out there for another thing. We can talk more about it. I could just talk forever. But I stumbled on a friend of mine had relocated from the art world, had relocated out there, and she took me around to the clubs and introduced me to the owner of the Meow Mix, which is a lesbian bar out there. Brooke was the owner, and I talked to her, and she said, "Yeah, we can have your band out here," and that was our debut place to go. That was the first club that we performed at in New York, and we always made that our always show. We always played the Meow Mix. It was great. So what was unique about us is that we weren't drag punk, because I was trans, and I actually, by then I had my breasts had developed, and I wasn't shy about them. I had pasties on them, but that was part of it. And the reason for that, you're right, but the reason for that was that I needed to prove that I wasn't crossing. I needed to prove at that time that this was 24/7 me, because I didn't alter my voice. I still have my singing voice, and it was deep. And so I could come off as being drag or somebody who was crossing, and I didn't want to. So I went for the and I wanted to be stronger, because a lot of the cross-dresser idea, the stereotype back then, was a very submissive, very femme person into the fetish world as a submissive. And I turned that on its head and took on the dom look. And so I became aggressive and dominant, and I brought that to the rock and roll stage, where it's all swagger. You know, you're all out there, and that's why I did that. It gave me strength on stage. It was self-empowering also, and people, they would give me shit, you know, sometimes in the small local towns around here, but I was in 4-inch heels, and I was 6 feet tall, and I looked like a dom, and people were pretty respectful. Usually, I did have death threats. I did have shit. But the interesting thing is that I wouldn't get angry at them. So I wouldn't get pissed off at them. They'd come, I go to the bar, and one of my favorite things before we go on stage is I go to the bar and I have some drinks, and people were like, well, what the hell's that? And they would come over and they want to sit with me and talk to me, mostly men, you know, or their girlfriends were like looking at me. And then they would want to find out who I was and blah, blah, blah. And then they would hear my voice, and then they would be like, whoa, shit. And then they would just go, you know, they would be really upset.
The guys would really be turned on.
And I'd let them go. I'd let them go, and I say, hey, just hang on. We're going to be on stage in a little bit. And they were like, oh, they got to see this.
Oh, we lost the call there. Hang on, guys. Let me get her back on the line. Right on Skype. Oh, I got signed out of Skype. That's interesting. Let me sign back into Skype. Bizarre. I've never had that happen before with Skype. Oh, really? Really? Hope we're still online. Holy shit. It just fully logged me completely out. Let me do this. Oh my God, really? Let's try that. I actually fully just got logged out of Skype. What a ridiculous thing to happen. I've never seen that happen before. There we go. So we'll jump back in here. Let's see. What is going on? Okay. Interesting. Let's do this. Sorry, guys. What I'll do is we'll play a track and come back. So we'll do that now. I was going to play a track anyway. So this is All the Pretty Horses, God Dog, and then we'll come back with Venus on the line again. You ready? Let's do this. Let me just mute her mic, just so when we come back. Okay, there we go. Let's do this.
on within Gemini Home Entertainments. And
Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. Holy hell. Now everything's all slowed down on my end. I'm so sorry about that, guys. Skype went mental, logged me out completely. I have no idea. Now everything's all slow on my end. So I don't know what is going on. Let's see if I can fix all this. I think we're a little bit better. Wow, that was so awesome song. We just played then what did we play? God, get my shit together. That was crazy trying to reset all that back up. Skype has never done that to me ever in my entire time doing this. And unfortunately, everything is so slow now. Let me see if I can fix. Yeah, it wasn't you. I got something happened to my Skype. I got knocked offline. And I think we're all back now. Cool. So I do apologize, everybody. So that was God Dog that we played there. So yeah, it was awesome. No, nothing's updating here. Deep Gravity's asked if something's updating. It's pretty much somebody tried to hack me. That's what pretty much happened. Somebody tried to change my password on Skype. Can you believe that? There you go. Awesome. So whoever it was out there, thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you die. Unbelievable. Really. I mean, Venus is muted. Let me unmute Venus here. There we go. There we go. You are unmuted now.
I am back.
Wow. Crazy, crazy stuff. All right. I'm going to go in let's do this because I need to do this now because we're behind. Let's run into my sponsor today. So today's sponsor is DistroKid. So I want to thank DistroKid for being a sponsor today of the show. And let's tell you something a little bit about DistroKid because, and I think there we are. So you can release all your music through DistroKid, folks, for as little as $19.99 per year. What am I saying? Per year. And you can release unlimited music through DistroKid, which is really awesome. I, as you can see here, release all my music through DistroKid. So all of my stuff here is released through DistroKid. I have many different bands, different albums, and I want to show you a really cool feature here with DistroKid for a bit of fun, bit of a laugh. You can actually add lyrics to your to DistroKid, so to your songs, and they will appear on your Apple Music or Facebook Music or Snapchat or Instagram, and it's really, really easy to do. All you need to do is hit goodies here and hit enhance your music, and you have a lyrics page here. There it is. So I'm going to add some lyrics to a song by FMC called Wank Snot Sandwich, which is one of my wonderful songs here. I'll only take a second. So all you need to do is actually click on the synced lyrics here. I've already put these lyrics in, so you can add your lyrics to the song. And once the song loads, it's like a video game. It's actually like playing one of these rhythm songs, like the guitar song on PlayStation or whatever. And all you need to do is hit play. We'll make sure the volume's up and hold down the space bar when the lyrics come up. And this will save this information onto the song. So let's hit play. Whoa. And check this out. As I hit the space bar with the words, let's do this. So it's like a game. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just hitting the space bar each time the lyrics come up. And that's it. And now I just hit save timed lyrics, and that is sent to DistroKid. And within the next couple of days, when you go to Apple Music or any of the streaming services, the lyrics will appear and they will move along with your actual lyrics. Really easy to do, and a really cool feature that is a part of DistroKid. So once again, folks, thank you to DistroKid for sponsoring the show. You will see up the top here, there's a link, distrokid/VIP/Jade Starr. And if you sign up using that link, you will get 7% off your first year with DistroKid. Absolutely worth your time. All right, we're back. Sponsorship done. Thank you, DistroKid. So, all right. So we played, what did I get my, man, I'm all over the place after all that stuff went down. Let's move out of this. Boom. There we are. So, all right. I've never had that happen before. So we played God Dog then. All right. So you come out, you're transitioning, and you start playing gigs. What is the response as you start touring around? Because you've traveled overseas with all the Pretty Horses as well. You've played around the world. This thing blew up. How does that feel as a trans person, like seeing this happen?
Well, it was good because you know what the way I wanted to approach it when I became public was to change things, to change people's minds. So I was saying before you lost me that I wouldn't get mad at people when they would confront me. I'd say, wait, we're going to be on stage. And then I'd win them over with the music. And they would come up and say, you know, I would almost always, only rarely would somebody who started off giving me trouble, would they continue to give me trouble if they stayed and watched us. And usually or often they would come up and say, you know, I don't get it. I don't get what you're doing, but keep doing it. I love the music, blah, blah, blah. So I would begin slowly getting things to change. And so in those early days when we began to tour, like, you know, if you saw the film, you saw us going to the UK and doing that, and the reaction that was going on with all of that. People had an issue with it, but at the shows, we would win them over, and people also got it and they loved it. So we were building allies, basically. And that eventually started to change, as we all see now, and we enjoyed the attitude that we have now, for the most part. Is a recognition and an understanding of our existence, and we're not seen as the way we used to be, as something frightening. We're seen for who we are, and we feel empowered, and we've got a voice again, or for the first time we have a voice, I mean to say. And so I guess that's the way it felt. I mean, those early days were, it was groundwork, and it was a lot of hassle. It was a lot of, you had to have a thick skin. And traveling overseas, we had to go through customs. I hadn't officially changed my name or my gender. And so I always was confronted with that. And that was difficult to navigate, and I would get trouble from the border people often, but I always had all the paperwork, and we had our travel visas. I did everything above board. We went to New Zealand, and we toured there twice. And I toured there with all the Pretty Horses once. A second time, I went there as a solo with a formed New Zealand band, but that tour fell apart, unfortunately, for circumstances. which I can go into, but let's not waste time on it. But I ended up being there, not being able to follow through on the tour at that time. But that first one was incredible, and we got interviews, and we were on the New Zealand. We were interviewed for the New Zealand 2020 and some of the gay New Zealand national shows, and yeah. I mean, I felt like I was making a difference and making things change. I am rambling. I'm going to stop now.
No, I actually agree 100%. You did. You absolutely contributed to change. I think you have a unique position as a musical artist compared to things like drag and all that kind of stuff, which I don't know. Sometimes I think they think they're opening eyes, but they're in a bubble, in their own bubble, doing that kind of stuff. So they're only reaching their own kind of people, where rock and roll is reaching the masses and opening their eyes to what's going on.
Exactly. I loved the rock and roll stage because it broke out of and we would play Pride, and we would do all of that, of course. But to go on to just a regular club, just a regular rock and roll club with regular other bands, and then we would get up on stage. It would blow people's minds, but it was good in a good way most of the time, not always, most of the time. And our audience was supportive. The club owners in the industry at that time, interestingly though, weren't always at our level of understanding or the audience's level. So we had to work hard at getting shows. We couldn't get, we had to play a lot of underground clubs and a lot of other smaller venues because the larger venues just were too suspicious. On occasion we did, but most of them were like that. Or we would perform and then they would just they would cancel our gig once they found out that I was trans.
Wow.
That happened a few times. And the industry just didn't really see us as worth an investment because I was trans at that time. It's hard to even think about now with the support that the industry has for trans artists now. It's amazing. But back then, no. And so I had to do it on my own and to be a true indie DIY. And that's where my credit card debt comes in. I racked up because I was the record label. And I had the leverage and finance, and you have to do that with what you have, and all I had were credit cards. Back in the day, everybody was getting credit cards, it was like candy in the 90s. And I got a couple very large ones back then at that time when that was the thing to do for the credit companies. They don't do that now, but they did then. Anyway, I easily went a couple $100,000 in debt on credit. We remortgaged our house 3 times to try to climb out of it. 4 times, actually. Never quite could. And it was only within the last 8 years, maybe the last 10 years, pretty recently, that I was finally able to climb out of that debt. And that was because my parents had passed away and I had a very small inheritance with the house that my mom and dad had put into my and my sister's name, and we were able to settle that, and I used it all to buy myself out of debt. So finally climbed out of it. But that was
rock and roll was a different thing back then too. And I know from knowing your music and knowing you for a long time, you are an incredibly hard-working touring artist I mean, much like when I met Tempest and Jen Dean, and when I met them, they were in Harsh Reality. They would tour and tour and tour it, and just like be making peanuts from it, and just grinding and grinding and grinding, because that's what you had to do back then. And
Yes.
you know, that's even so with all the touring that you do. I want to ask this because I think it's quite relevant. How did COVID, well, the inconvenience, I said the C word, but how did, when that,
the burn.
yeah, you call it the burn, I call it the inconvenience. When the burn hit, how did that impact you as a creative artist, you know, and not being able to hit the road, not being able to be you?
Oh, it was strange. I had just brought Danny May in, my bass player, right before COVID. And then that just blew up. And so she was in the band, but we couldn't rehearse. It was too dangerous. I figured out, and my drummer Trevor, T-Rev, was at that time lived in Chicago, and he was always kind of a long distance drummer for a decade with the Horses with me, and we would cram on shows and a tour, and then we would all get together, and then we go, there he is, there's Trevor. And he and his husband actually last year relocated to Minneapolis for the first time in probably 20 years. There's Danny May. For the first time, we actually were in the same town. We did Zoom meetings with the band. I would talk to everybody. We started working on music, sharing files. There's Kat Morgan, one of my dancers, and we created. We tried to stay active online until things started to calm down with COVID, and last spring it seemed like we had made it through. We did our first show. Danny May was finally able to perform for the first time with the band, so she was very thrilled. We were just like, okay, we're back to normal, and we started doing all of our outdoor shows. There's Natalie and Don, two of my other dancers. So I have 3 dancers that I work with. And then of course Delta came, and then everything shut down again. So yeah, we're reinventing. And one of the upsides of this, if you can call it that, is the internet. Save for Skype bumping me off just now. It's great. So we're trying to understand what to do. We're working on a couple of music videos now. On February 20th, Sunday, I'm going to do a live stream open rehearsal with the band. That'll be on my YouTube channel, and my Patreon page. So I'll do a free half-hour open to everybody, or free hour open to everybody on my YouTube channel. I'm still pulling that together, so it'll be out there. You won't see it yet, but within the next week I'll have it up. And then for the second hour, I go to my Patreon only members, and then they get to see the second half of our show. And my Patreon, I'm not searchable because it's an 18+ page, but if you go to patreon.com /
I put a link.
Venus to Mars, yeah. And then you can get to it. And then you get to see, and I noticed a few of my Patreon members are here today. So hello to you all. Thank you for showing up. And so it's a new world. And so the grind touring, like you were describing, it was fun. I loved it. But it was a lot of work. I do miss it. And now what we're looking at doing is trying to do more online presence, and then doing more particular shows, so planned shows, smaller tours where we can be a little bit more careful. We're planning one for the new album to go just Southwest tour, and and there's some of my live streaming from my living room upstairs, right up here. And so yeah, it's a new world. It's we're still trying to figure it out, as everyone is.
Yeah, so I have put links in the description, everybody, to Venus's Patreon page and to a YouTube channel and all of her music. So you've got no excuses to go and check out everything, all the Pretty Horses albums, all Venus's albums. There's all the stuff, Spotify, wherever you want to get it, it's all there. Thank you very much also to Metalhead Hippie for the kind $5 super chat. Thank you so much. You can super chat if you like, folks. Always appreciated, never expected, of course. So thank you very much for that, Metalhead Hippie. All right, and this is just a little snippet. And these live performances are great. Production is amazing. Sound is amazing. Trust me,
Thank you.
You want to watch these. They're beautiful, absolutely beautiful. I'm just going to play a bit more.
All those houses
Wow.
and that warmth through those windows as I drive with abandon, hating life. Did I see? Am I gone? Am I gone? Am I gone? Am I gone?
Beautiful stuff. I could listen to that all day long. Guys, make sure you subscribe and hit up the Patreon because they're awesome shows. So the music industry, it's changed a lot over the years. And, with all of your touring and being out there doing a hard slog on the road, how's that affected your lineup changes? Because, you've had quite a few people come through all the Pretty Horses over the years. And, do you think, is that the stress of the road? Is it the music industry changing? I mean, I'm the same. I've had bands that have had so many lineup changes. I mean, and how has all those lineup changes changed your sound over the years?
It's I've had about all the reasons any band breaks up or bandmates leave. Because of the structure I put in, then I was able to move things on. So sometimes people in the band, their life just gets too complicated and they just feel like they can't do the work anymore. And so they bow out. Those are probably the best, although they're disappointing. And then sometimes there is a disagreement and where we feel like we're not communicating the way we should be. And then those things push things apart. I do feel really good that I am on good terms with about all of my ex bandmates. and I lost one now last month. That was Jazz. That was my drummer. From the era right before now, and he died in a motorcycle accident down in Louisiana. We're going to do a memorial performance for him here in Minneapolis. He had relocated down to Louisiana after we toured with Laura in 2014. He and then my bass player at that time, LaFreak. I took time away to work on my solo acoustic album, and during that time, those two bandmates went and found different ways to go. So then when I came back, I brought Trevor back as my drummer, who I had worked with previous to Jazz, and we started working as kind of beginning to reform the band and trying people out and bringing people back in. So it's all variety of ways for things to come and go, and each era we accomplish a lot. When Tempest and Jendine were in the band, we made it all the way to Spain. We were pushing the performance with performances being driven by the film festival for the film. That started when my bass player was Eden, and that was but Jen was still in the band. She was my drummer in the band for through 3 albums, I believe. I'll have to double check that, but I believe 3. And I love all of the eras, and they captured a certain flavor of the energy of the band at the time when that group
Yep.
and me worked together. The dynamics were they reflect their influences and what they do. Traditionally, we performed as a 3-piece live, but I started working with my producer, Barb Morrison of Super Buddha Music, but you can Google Barb Morrison, and you will find out all about them. They are also part of the trans community, and a very well-established producer now, but I met them back in the early days when they were working as a bartender at the Meow Mix, which we talked about before. So I have worked with Barb as my producer for a long time, and when I do release the albums, they're produced, usually we have the produced versions of the music, so that we can get radio play and that kind of thing. But then when we perform it, we strip it down and we have it more of just a core 3-piece, and then we kick it out in that way. So there's a couple of different sounds of the band. There's the live sound. One of the things we're playing with doing now is I'm working on a music video for releasing. We're trying to record some of our live sounds, the raw sound that we perform off stage, and then turning that into a music video. So I'm working on our debut one for that, and that I'm hoping to release
Awesome.
by the end of this month. So we'll hopefully get that out.
Let's talk gear for a second. Yeah. What kind of stuff do you have in your studio to make music? What DAW are you using? Are you using a computer? What kind of computer? What makes up your studio currently in 2022?
Well, I've always always used Apple and Mac, so that's what I use. It seemed less difficult to set up for me, and I just got used to it. So I do everything with Apple. My DAW, I'd use 3. So I usually track with Logic, because I've just gotten familiar. And my producer, Barb, used that traditionally when they had their studio in New York. So it just made sense for me to learn that. And I could bring my tracks out there and it would transfer very easily. But I began to also use an interesting one, which is more analog based, called Mixbus. I started doing that about a decade ago, and I've just become the biggest fan. That's what I do all of my mixing on now. So I'll track on Logic, and then I'll transfer everything to Mixbus, and I'll work with everything on Mixbus. It's very analog based. You can drive things and get a real nice analog overdrive rather than the digital crackly breakup. It's amazing. There you go. Yeah. And I have the top one, the 32C is the one I use, but I have both, but I use that one more exclusively. And then for a lot of my effects, I use IK Multimedia effects, which I found to be real nice. They're very good for sampled effects.
They have sent me so much gear over the last couple of years. They're so wonderful. I love them so much.
Yeah, they've got a lot of real nice stuff. So I love using, when I'm using a plugin, I'll use that. But the nice thing about Mixbus comes just with its own compressors and everything on each channel. It's just kind of ready to go. And then, of course, I have Pro Tools because that's the musical standard. But I'd use Pro Tools not as much. I do most of my work on Mixbus, actually. So yeah, that's kind of the software end of everything. For my hardware, I've got my my guilds. Here's another one of my guilds here.
Wow, look at that thing.
This is the one. That's my whammy bar. They did, Guild put out all of these nice heavy metal guitars for just a short while. I bought a whole bunch of them. I've got 4 of them from that era, 3 of them from that era, plus my first one, which is the SG style one. And I just really love them. But Guild is known for acoustic and that kind of stuff. So I guess they never sold that well, and so they quit doing that. Now they're trying to make a resurgence, but I don't know if I like the new ones that much. I like the older ones. I got a Nova. I used a Nova for a long time. And then I have my Striper guitar from the band Striper, Lord. The Christian band Striper. And that is according to the used guitar owner that I bought it from here locally. He's friends with that band, and this was one of the first guitars that they had, and those are all kind of custom painted guitars prepared for them. And so I've got one of the old cast offs, which I love. It's that's my main guitar now. So if you see me performing or in the music videos that are coming out, you'll see the Striper guitar. And I don't know, honestly, I have no idea what they think.
I love the irony of that. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I saw Striper live myself when I was a bit younger, and I remember queuing up for they had an in-store signing here in Australia at this tiny little record store back in the days when metal albums were like boutique stores here in Australia, and everyone was packed in so tight to get in this tiny little store. The glass window smashed and we all fell through this window. People had their arms cut open, and it was, and I just remember saying to a friend, "Where's your God now?" Like, it was the only band that's ever happened to, and I saw them live, and they had a lot of backing tracks, I have to say. There were a lot of backing tracks. But it was still so cool to see. So cool just to be a part of that movement at the time, you know. But that's awesome.
Well, I have to, all of the heavy metal acts and that style of music, you have to be
Yeah.
such a musician and craft oriented to perform. I am very impressed with all of the musicians that work in the genre. I personally, I come from the punk world, which it's, you know, you didn't have to be that articulate on your guitar. So I play my guitar to support my voice. I don't try to show off too much, but I can do some things, but I don't do all of that kind of real technical
So you're basically
stuff
saying you
on my
don't wank
guitar.
off on your guitar. So. I don't
No,
either.
no,
I let
don't.
other people do that.
My bandmates can. They all they can play circles around me, all of them. But I have my style and my little unique way of doing it, and that is the thread sound that goes through all of my music is me on my guitar and my style. I play through a bass amp, so a Harkey bass amp with the aluminum cones, and I kind of stumbled on that as I don't use guitar amps. I use the Harkey solid state um, bass amp and a big bass 4-channel cabinet with I used to do a stack of 2, but now I do that with a stack of 4 and then the 2. So it's a real deep low sound from my guitar, and then I get my distortion from my pedals, and I traditionally use Big Muff Electro Harmonix for my pedals for my distortion, and I work with 2 distortion pedals, so one for the quiet overdrive sound, and then I hit both of them for the real stuff, or you know. So I've got kind of my sound
I
that
want
I
to ask a
do.
little bit more about this
So yeah.
this documentary this movie that you're a part of. So Venus of Mars, because from and I've seen this, and this started off from my knowledge as a documentary about the kind of your music, but as it went on, it started to become something else and more of a story about you and your beautiful partner Lynette, and how all that happened.
Yes.
How intrusive was this? Was it intrusive to have this just naturally? Did it naturally go into this kind of film? And was it hard to expose yourself so openly in this film? Because it's a really incredible film.
There was an interesting point, and it was difficult. We had a typical rock and roll path to go through for a couple. I was dedicated to the band and working hard and spending a lot of money in it, and I was ignoring a lot of relationship things, and we ran into a lot of difficulty, primarily not the trans stuff. Interestingly, it was the rock and roll stuff. My obsession with that, which you have to have that to work in the industry. It takes time to learn how to wrangle that all in. It was hard, and sometimes it escapes me even now, and I have to remind myself, even after all these years, that I really have a full life, not just that. It was hard, and having the film follow us around was thrilling and exciting.
Wow.
It was 4 years that they followed us all over the place, walking down the streets in New York. People would wonder who I was with these big cameras following me around the streets. That was great. I love that. But, and I in a weird way, I kind of missed it when it was all over. But yeah, there was some difficult things. And now here's the interesting thing in this film. Lynette and I had one big, huge argument on the street in New York in front of our hotel room. Big argument. Yelling, swearing, throwing. Oh, it was big. and the camera
Wow.
crew was right there, kind of walked into it. I won't go into all the reasons behind that. And I'll tell you how you can find out about it after we're done here with this little story that I'm telling you. But the camera crew walk by. Nowadays with reality TV, they'd be all over it. They would have all of that. They would be right there in our faces and capturing it. You know that. And the audience knows that. What the filmmaker, Emily Goldberg, did with her film crew, she just let it go and walked past and let us have it out on our own. And because of that, she gained our trust. And we let her in closer because of that. And that, I think, is how the film became the film that it is, rather than a tell-all, all the horrible stuff happenings type of reality TV type of film. And I think the film is better for that. It got really close and intimate once that happened. And I am still friends with the filmmaker. We still get together, and who does that? What subject of a documentary film will stay friends with the filmmaker? So I mean, it really is unique,
because it can be very confronting.
For that.
Did you have any kind of creative control and say over things that you may not have wanted in there? Like, or is there stuff that made it where you just like, I didn't want that in there? Did you have some kind of control?
A little, yes. The filmmaker she was very generous with. And we didn't. We were like, no, go do it. We were actually encouraging her to show more of the difficult parts and the hard parts. We actually were kind of letting her know it's okay, that hard stuff. So she did let us see some of the rushes and double checked on some things that she wanted to make sure was okay. But she asked difficult questions. My mom was alive at that time. Then she was interviewed. My sister was alive. And these were the early days. Now, This came out in 2004. So my mom was older. She was an older mom when she had me. I was like at the very end of that possibility. It was almost like I was the last chance for her. So she was old generation. And I am just very impressed with how she dealt with very direct questions that the filmmaker put to her. I wasn't there when she answered them. And I'm proud of my mom. She was very supportive. At a time when it was unusual to support somebody in the trans community.
Well, I think it's a fantastic film. I've seen it. I think, if you get the chance, guys, go and rent it. It's $3. It's not a lot of money to go rent it. If you want to buy it, it's $25. You can find it on Amazon. I will make sure the link is in the description after the show, so you can go and do that there. We're getting to the end of the show now. I want to thank you for coming on here. I do have one question, and I'm going to go out with a song today. I want to thank you. There's so much more we could have covered here. Absolutely, these shows, they go for 2 hours, and it still never scratches the surface. So I want to thank you so very much for coming on and being so candid about who you are and what you've gone through, your experiences as a musician. I want to thank you for your music too and friendship. So I'm stoked that you came on the show. I want to thank DistroKid also. Remember, there's a link over there somewhere, distrokid.com/VIP/Jade Starr, and you can get 7% off your first year with DistroKid. So do that and release your music, guys. Do it. There's no time like the right time. And that leads into this last question I ask everybody. It's not a trick question. If somebody was considering becoming creative and releasing music, when would you suggest be the best time for them to start doing so?
Oh my goodness. Just right away. Whenever you are inspired, just start working. Um, knowing that I didn't start singing till I was in my early 20s, 21, 22. I mean, you can do it. You can just start working, start screaming into that microphone. It'll eventually happen.
Absolutely. So the
yeah.
song I'm going to go out with today is a live performance. And yes, of course.
Oh, one plug real quick. Let me just sneak it in.
Yes.
I'm writing a memoir. My spouse, Lynette Rainey Grandel, has written hers. It's all about this whole time we've been talking. And hers is being published and will be coming out in spring of 2023. And it's a Minnesota Historical Press. So that will be available. Hopefully, I will have mine done as the rebuttal, and that will come out maybe if I can find a publisher a year later, so 2024.
I do recall, and I had it written here.
That's a plug
about you writing. I know you've been writing for a long time. I just didn't know what stage it was. So I'm glad you brought that up. Now, folks, remember, all the links to all Venus's music is in the description. Everything is in there. You can find her on Facebook, all the social media stuff. I've made sure it's all there, nice and easy for you to go and dig, because there is a hell of a lot of music. But what we are going out with today, this is a live performance, and this one burns me because I had the chance to be there at this particular performance, because I was in Minnesota and I was offered by Venus to come on stage and perform at this thing, and I was not well enough at the time. So seeing it was like, oh man, what a huge missed opportunity for myself. But I get to relive it now. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this clip that I'm about to play and what it was all about? Sure is.
Is that the one at First Avenue? All right. Yes. That is an annual fundraiser that a local DJ on local public station, The Current here, Mary Lucia started. And it is a fundraiser for rescue cats, pet rescue. And so it turned into Rebel is the official name. And it's a Bowie tribute night where a very, very talented band, house band, is formed, and very talented. It sounds like the recordings, honestly. And they invite different Minnesota connected artists to come up and sing a cover song, and they back them. And as it turned out, once I got involved, and because I didn't feel like I could do that. I have kind of a unique vocal range. And I just felt like I was going to fail. I kind of begged my way into doing my own version without the house band. And Mary was kind enough to let me do that. And eventually over the years, I brought my band, the Horses, up, and we became kind of the halftime show. So the house band takes a break. We come out and we do our cover. I get to do my take on the cover. And have my own band, and then we are the halftime show, and then we leave, and then the house band comes up and does their second set. So that's the thing. This year was the year that we lost both David Bowie and Prince. And so we felt, and it was pretty fresh and pretty new. So we felt, I felt I wanted to make some acknowledgement of that because it was on everybody's mind. And so we did that, and that's kind of how we end the song.
All right, guys. Thank you once again, Venus, for coming on the show. Please hang on the line, and I'll catch up with you after I shut the show down. Thank you, everybody in the chat, for hanging out through the little technical difficulties we got through, but we always get through them, yeah? So this is All the Pretty Horses live at First Avenue in 2016, tribute to David Bowie. So we'll see you again. I won't be here tomorrow because I'll be playing a live show in Melbourne, and I may be streaming it live on the channel. So keep your eyes on this channel. It may be streamed live impromptu. If I can't do it, I'll actually record it and stream it the day after. So thanks, as always, for being here. Thanks for supporting the channel, everybody. And let's go out with this track, and we'll see you soon. Remember, do the things that make you happy. Mistakes make you better. And we all rise together. Bye.
It's been 2 years since we performed, and so now tonight we're back, and of course it has to be, you know, after Bowie died. So it's a tough night for that, to remember all of that, and we lost Prince too. So we're losing a lot of people, but I'm really excited about tonight. I think we've got a good song tonight.
When you climb the top of the mountain, look out over the sea. Think of all the places young man can be. Then you jump back to the rooftops. Look out over the sound. Think of all the strange things circulating round.
We lost them both. Yeah? We lost them both. They're both so powerful and strong, and they're both stars. Well, it was a lot of fun. It's like when you start working, you just don't want it to end. You want to just keep going. It felt really good.